Hello, everyone. My name is Yuta Jazz, and I am going to come back to talk to you for another episode of the Occult podcast. And this one's going to be about the Underworld. Now, disclaimer, m- all of the knowledge I've ever learned has been like fucking wiped clean since the last few years of me just living. My ascension process, literally, like anything and everything I've learned even throughout the spiritual period of my life has just been fucking wiped. So I didn't really even want to do this, but it was stuck and it was just stuck energetically, like I was really pushed and I couldn't get off of that train. To talk about the underworld, especially considering like where the episodes have went. The underworld, and also then following some other topic related to that, is literally like I guess I don't know the best vibe forward. I don't know energetically just the right trajectory or whatever. If I could have chosen differently, I would have. So most of this is going to be channeled because I literally can't remember shit I learned in history. Plus mythologically, I'm not that savvy, neither in folklore anymore as well. Like none of it, just fucking none of it. Um, if you want to delve in deeper into the topic of Underworld, I really recommend checking out the different cultures that have their own underworld descriptions and underworlds in general and the systems behind them because they're super duper fucking interesting. They're one of the most interesting topics you could delve into within history and culture. Primarily, the ones that really jump out at me are Greek slash Roman times, Egyptian, as well as Hindi or Hindu or whatever, and Indian, the Eastern Indian, not the Western Indian. I mean, Indians in general from America would also have their own teachings behind it, but also I know that Native American stuff is very much hidden and locked down, the same as Aboriginal stuff. It kind of goes within the community more so than outside of the community. Some of it isn't even written down at all in any way. It doesn't have an archive. It's just passed down word of mouth stories and knowledges and etc. And some of the times you can't even figure it out, even if you're a part of the community, because you need to be initiated into knowledge, usually through shamanic practices or other stuff like that. Um, this is just from my understanding. If you're from one of those cultures, feel free to share the process if you feel like it. Most likely you are not going to because it's locked down. And it's that's fine, but that's just how I know it to be the case. Otherwise than that, we're gonna delve into a little bit of how astrally, I guess, the underworld works and translates and what it's about, and um, I'm gonna mention a little bit of, I guess, what you could reference research for yourself within history books, Google, anywhere where you get your information or research, right? So you can expand on the topic because if you're not a person that delves into astral traveling, spiritual work, or talking to specific deities, you don't have psychic abilities, you're not a medium for that type of shit. You know, you're just not really there yet, or it might take you years to get there. Maybe you've just awoken, maybe you're on your first like spiritual or highly spiritual like lifetime, right? And it's like, how do I get there? Best thing to do is get curious and dive into the topic of it where we have it culturally through different types of religions. I do not recommend just one. I think it's interesting also getting to know the world in that way. So if you're traveling, book some museums, book some tourist like travel navigation things, whatever guides groups where they're going to lead you to these specific ruins or places and actually teach you about it like properly. And you know there's different places that you can visit. I mentioned Egypt, India, and My brain's already blanking. Fucking Egypt, India, and freaking Greece. There we go. But you can also go to Asia in general, like China or Japan has their own understanding of the underworld and what it is, and they have different deities and systems behind that. But also, you can go into different parts of Europe or even America, the whole entire continent, like south and north, and see what you can find out there. Wherever you're called to go will probably give you the most knowledge and will connect you to your own intuition, the beings that are like relevant to you or want to speak to you, somehow educate you, connect you to really grounded experiences where it's like proper learning and can be a really fun vacation. Might be a good switch out as well for those people that just go on vacations to just like do nothing and lounge on the beach or, travel around and have like parties or fun or some type of like activities where it's more towards, I don't know, like sports-ish stuff, right? Um, Instead of that, maybe, or maybe you're tired of like specific types of just museums and art galleries, so this could be like a nice way to mix it up, get, acquainted with the culture of those places and get some spiritual like use out of it. You don't necessarily need to go to a church or a religion or a spokesperson of specific sort, right, to get those experiences. I've even heard that some people can have like specific native tribes in like North America take you through some camping and other like stuff that they do where they guide you and also share their culture. And they do share a little bit about this and that. They won't delve into the dark shit too much because of really good reasons. Um, but when we're talking about the underworld, it's not just negative, dense stuff, and it's not just like I guess the creepy crawly bump in the night type of shit. It's also it's way more deep than that. In Egypt, it's called like Duat, the underworld, I believe. I could be fucking wrong, honestly. I really brushed up like 2 seconds of goddamn Wikipedia before I went into this, and I was surprised that Egypt actually has a shit ton of different gates for the underworld, and there's like a bunch of beings responsible for those gates, and they don't necessarily actually have names. Which makes sense to me, but at the same time, some of those beings looked super fucking terrifying and creeping. Overall, the underworld from cultures is terrifying and creepy. Because I guess the best way I would describe it for myself, it's not like this at all in practice, but it's kind of like spiritualists when they talk about the fourth dimension being like full of like dark shit. It's kind of the same in a way, uh, because the underworld, as much as it has a purpose of kind of being like in the in between of everything, the funny thing about the underworld is like every dimension has a connection to the underworld. It has a avenue to it or a relevance to it, or the underworld somehow like feeds into it or gives a process of like processing energy for all dimensions everywhere. It doesn't matter how high up or low you're gonna go, the underworld somehow feeds into it. The underworld has all types of beings from all types of dimensions. Yes, it has different gates. Yes, it has different levels, and yes, it has multitudes of different beings in it. But some of those beings are really also just high vibing beings. They're not just gods of like death, transition, and the underworld. They're also divine gods of actual like light, order, maybe some type of justice system. They could also be gods of, I don't know, like the sun or sky elements or whatever you want to say. Freaking angels also that work with the underworld preside mostly in heaven. Some of them have kind of like fallen down a few notches or have like decided to stay stuck to uh, darker or denser aspect of themselves or timelines, right? Some of them just in general prefer working with very volatile energies or working towards like transmuting certain things within creation, right? Um, but let's say, for example, we're talking about Azrael, the angel of death. They themselves actually, and I'm not giving them a gender because they're both apparently old time. They actually like reside in heaven a lot of the time, but they do a lot of fucking work with the underworld as well as going in between of multiple different dimensions. A lot of them quite dense, a lot of them quite oh so full, chock full of creepy whatever fucking shit, right? But they wouldn't be the only angel that does that. There's many other angels that work with either underworld energy or death energy. The underworld in general, it has so much in it. I couldn't even like you could write a fucking book on how much is in the underworld. A lot of the time in mythologies and legends, you're going to hear it described as like the in-between space that you transition through to get into the afterlife, or into hell. Or into heaven sometimes, very rarely. Well, 11:11 as I said that, which is really kind of weird, but moving on. Yeah, so there's more that happens there. There's alchemy is a primary of it, so transmutation energy and death as well. But there's also a bunch of other things, and I guess generalizations of energy are coming through as topics to mention, but I'm also like picking apart some of it just so I can specify what it is, without it just, being yeah, all over the place. But besides that transmutational alchemy energy, there's a lot of like, I guess, what do you call it? Judgment, I guess, that happens over there. There's a lot of like there's a sifting of souls that happens through the underworld, but doesn't it's not just like limited to souls, it's sifting of energy of any and all sorts. It's real reaffirming it, reallocating it, uh ma making it go through purging processes so it actually gets like purified to where it needs to go further on. And there's a lot of ways that that can be, happening or occurring, especially within energy or the spiritual realm. That's also why the underworld is kind of like connected to absolutely everything, or every space has its own underworld. It's just this in between that connects everything in a way. It's like a shadow, I guess, of everything, of the order of everything. It's not necessarily just bad or dark or whatever, but it definitely has that. The sifting process of energy being kind of diluted into its purest form can happen in many different ways. It can happen through obviously death and transmutation, sifting, traveling and journeying of souls, or, as well as them being helped with, certain means or certain beings doing that journey for them with them. That list and how it's done is ever expanding. You've heard like I guess the myth of like the boat's journey with over the river is Styx, right? That's one way, but there's many other ways of having that experience. Depends on where you fall and what your faith is and a bunch of other yada yada stuff. But also it can be certain wars can be waged there, certain judgment can be carried over either via courts or other processes. Um, I'm not quite sure, but I want to say for some reason that when your like heart gets weighed, it's in a limbo space somewhere in the frickin' underworld, which I cannot speak for that being. I can't necessarily say that's the actual case of how it happens and occurs. But that's how it appears and seems to me, honestly. It is a case of when your heart is weighed against a feather, that's like the void limbo space that you sit in before you can actually transition through to where you need to go to, wherever that is. And now there's way more options than there has been when that process or story has originated. And it is a real experience. It is a real thing that some people might get to. You can have it happen even while you're alive. And that shifts you over through an underworld experience where you learn from your shadow and go shadow realming through your own, I don't know, darkness. And then eventually you get plopped out somewhere where you gotta live through either at least one timeline or multiple, depending on what your judgment is. Um, Other beings that actually are getting like promoted while they're living go through that process as well, just to have like this clarification experience of like where their heart sits and for it to be proven and for it to be like noted by, I guess, the universe or whatever. And so you get plopped into higher timeline experiences, and that's kind of like a lockdown. Most of the time, it's kind of like one continuous blessing of a timeline, but sometimes it is, depending on the situation, like a bit more varied. Um, I don't know why birthing, like just in general, like pregnancy is coming through as well as like sex. I'm not quite sure. I mean, those energies are the most transformational in terms of like experience as well as vibes as well. Um, Sex, death, and birth are kind of like the pinnacle of it, honestly. Um, that's why when you hear on certain things like as being like really either popular or really easy to obsess about or just widespread in the world, right? Those are usually the freaking things that are widespread. And you can't get away from them, and they're always just going to keep happening. They are the strongest, the most huge aspect of like transformational energy and alchemy all together everywhere, all through everything. So, yeah, I don't actually have much to say on the actual beings, which I think is kind of good because you can figure it out yourself. You can research, you can read up on wherever, you find your relevant information. If you haven't studied it for a while, maybe you'll find that you connect with some of the beings in general for it with it. Um, I've had certain encounters with some beings, but mostly I don't really work with them. Um, I guess I had a few run-ins with like the Angel of Death, Ezreal, but also I guess I've seen like Grim Reapers when I was a freaking kid. That was goddamn terrifying, honestly. I really was scared that that household was going to get because I've seen them in a few places, but one household where I saw them was really like it freaked me out because I was like, I really hope you guys aren't gonna have like a bad thing fall upon you, like that this isn't a bad omen, that this Grim Reaper is doing something good here, which apparently it was, but I don't delve into, I guess, working with those beings as much because I myself just kind of go and do my own thing in the underworld. The Underworld also is another thing I did want to mention is like it's a collection of possible shadow realms. Um, and shadow realms, in this case, you can imagine kind of like dream realms. So some people can also traverse shadow realms of not just themselves but other individuals, which is dodgy as fuck. It's more dodgy than dream traveling and dream realming and, working through dreams. I do not recommend you do that unless you are a underworld soul or being or work with those beings and they can help you like navigate those spaces. Because yeah, there's a lot of volatile energy. There's a lot of turbulent crap happening in the underworld. It's very much like I guess like survival vibes, you know how Mother Nature be scary, as it's said sometimes, right? As it's beautiful, there is also like fucking freaky shit in it, and also you don't really want to fuck with some stuff, being just like human, right? Um, Same happens with the underworld. If you don't necessarily know the rules of how it functions, what paths to take, where to go, who to speak to, who to not speak to, and how to interact in those spaces, or who to call on, or where to do specific processes as well, you can get fucked real quick. You can get severe attachments, you can get into shitty contracts, you can get judged or punished for no goddamn reason. You can get into encounters that just are really gonna stick to you and are not going to be beneficial for your soul or soul's journey. And it can happen while you're living, if you're astral traveling, obviously, and you're free to willy-nilly go around, or if you are passed over and on, and then you try and, evade fate or destiny, or kind of try and control the circumstance, or just run and escape to other aspects of the underworld to get a better experience of some sort. There's been very, very many attempts on that. Don't risk it. Just kind of take where you are with the herald you're going with, because they're probably assigned to you for a fucking reason. Most people don't really try and escape their fate when they're in the underworld anymore. Thank fuck. But it still happens, and there's still beings that really try and get their way in the underworld, and you kind of really can't. You really, really can't, because out of the most strict doing it by the book type of like beings and people that you can have, the underworld is kind of the entire collection of those beings and people. They either run by ethics and morals to the T, by rules and regulations to the T, by specific order of cosmos in the universe by to the T, or just survival and devouring to the T, and destroying and destruction, a bunch of other crap, because that's their birthright. That's their primary. That's why they were created to begin with. Is kind of like frickin' what do you call it? I don't know the word in English because English is my second language. Um, the things that like dissect rotting or dying things in our world. As I say that, kind of funny. But those things, that eat up corpses and bring it back into the earth, um, which can be either, insects or just bacteria or actual animals, right? Um, those beings that I just mentioned are basically that. They are the ones that dissect and recycle reality for what it has to be. And some of them are so savage they don't really have a categorization system. They just, if you're there, that's it. You're gonna be food for them. So I would recommend not venturing out into there, especially if you're tripping on stuff, which I don't know why that came up, but some people be crazy and want to have extreme experiences, right? But out of all of the places that you could accidentally fall into, don't fall into the underworld when you're tripping, like high-end tripping. It's not a good idea. Really not a good idea. But yeah, beings like Anubis are really good to work with as well. Very straight cut, kind of like order of stuff he follows. Good for multiple purposes and reasons. Also, not necessarily a being you want to joke around with. Also, very curious. So depending on what you're going through, could be a really good either advisor or tutor or whatever. Um, how to know if you're a underworld being or you like working with underworld energies and stuff and vibes and whatever. You delve into a lot of either shadow work for the collective or yourself, and you are constantly healing, transmuting, shifting things. You don't really sit still when it comes to just like peace and calm and serenity. You are the individual or the person that goes through a lot of like turbulent change when it comes to multiple topics of quite darker, dense experiences, and you are healing usually a lot of like really deep, deep cutting things. I've also noticed that humans or people that have incarnated as obviously freaking humans, but they come from the underworld. They're kind of old souls from that realm, let's say, um, or they are very much closely tied to it. Usually, why did I just fucking blank it? I feel like maybe I would have outed someone, or someone didn't want to fucking hear it. Uh, it was there and then it was gone. I hate when that happens, don't you? Oh, there we go. They're freaking softies. That wasn't even that bad. They're freaking emotional, very kind, very loving people, but they've been through the freaking ringer, and it's kind of like their lessons don't really stop their whole entire life. They might set it up in particular ways where they break out of a lot of trauma and karma and healing and seeing the worst of the worst when it comes to certain life experiences. But they are always a person that becomes a guiding light, a teacher, a place of safety, a healer of some sort when it comes to deep trauma or discomfort, and they help the collective alchemize these experiences and put notion of understanding, higher understanding to them instead of just being like completely fucked up by their negative experiences or hardships, right? You have these people become really good teachers, really good psychologists, really good caretakers of any sort, either um, becoming like even death or birth doulas, but also they could be people that look after children or mentally ill people or whatever, and they really look after them, but they also help like that energy alchemize or get the attention that it needs instead of like spiraling out into more trauma and oppression. Um, yeah, whatever it is, because it doesn't even need to just stay to that aspect, right? But usually they do become some type of like social spokesperson or healer, teacher, or whatever it is. And if not, they might just embody that energy in whatever aspect that they do within their career profession. Um, like they're the person that knows the company's trajectory for multiple years. They've been through all the changes, and they're the only one that really stuck around. Maybe they've even gotten promotions or got in charge of some things, and they oversee change. Um, maybe, they just overall know how certain things need to transition and shift so they are better than before, and you also go over the extreme nuances of it. Yeah. I'm trying to think of something else, but I don't know. I feel like I had a few things and they kind of just fucking blipped because they were going to be about some specifications when it comes to people and the underworld and whatever. There's not really much that I need to channel through about the topic besides like it's everywhere, it connects to everything. Beings from that realm are very by the book. They help everything move along. Everything and everyone is kind of like gonna work with it or respond to it or go under the process of the underworld. There is no escaping it. Shadow realms or shadow realms and lower realms of your own personal world are located somewhere there. They're just like in their own nook and cranny of the corner. You can traverse. Would not recommend that. Stay to your own shadow realm unless you do know what the fuck you're doing and you can, help other people or explore, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it. Um, unless you have a guide. Unless you have guides you can trust or they know that you are right to do it. Yeah, it's just there's so much happening there. There's so many monsters and other things, and just there's great beings, right? But usually if they find you and you're not supposed to be outside of your own shadow realm or outside of whatever wherever you need to go through the underworld to do certain processes, because you're going to go through the underworld to do certain processes of your own. Um, you're going to go through your own lower realm self, I guess you could say. You'll go through your own shadow realm, shadow world. You're going to come out and transition through to wherever you need to go to. You might go through different aspects of the underworld to achieve that or recognize that and experience that. You usually already have people assigned to you to help you through that, though. So if you're fucking around with the whole experience, trying to escape it and run away from it, while you're in there, um, usually someone's gonna try and catch you and help you not get into more trouble, but they're already gonna give you a pretty stern look of like, you didn't need to do this, like it's gonna be fine. Might as well not, kind of avoid your own fate and whatever is occurring currently. 'Cause yeah, you might encounter things that are better left not encountered for you, depending on what aspect of it you're at or where you're at, yeah. So. And then again, some people might be actually learning how to become, I guess the best way I would describe it, and don't get a freaking full head or balloon head over this, but or an inflated ego as it were. Some people are learning how to become a underworld deity because, promotions are happening all the time in the spiritual realm. Also, judgment in general of all sorts, so you might be knocked down a few notches. Um, But yeah, you might be, one of those beings that is learning how to use the magic of the underworld, how to protect other people within the shadow realm, how to healthily use those energies or aspects or call them into experience or fruition. Maybe you're experiencing and learning the different sides to it or the different magics involved, either in a darker and more malevolent way or benevolent way. Because yet again, the world still has beings that are not really fun and not really kosher. Um, Not really on the side of helping you out. But there's not really many of them. Most of them are kind of just doing what they need to do to create coexistence of some sort or bring in more balance. They just do it in a darker form. Because alchemy, transmutation, that sifting process, right? It's not necessarily nice. It's literally kind of ripping apart shit and being like, okay, this is not essential, it's useless and dead. This is essential, weave it into this thread, and you're kind of like unweaving and weaving together certain things into their purest form, and purifying anything is not necessarily the nicest of things. Um, think about anything going through a purification process. It needs to go through intense either time, chemistry, heat, right? Isolation of some sort, reintegration. It's a messy clearing process that is kind of essential for all of us. So, yeah, if you're going through a really tough time and you need to go through, I don't know, you need to go through some type of like intense healing, I would recommend one, not being afraid of it, especially when you hear terms like go through your own shadow realm, um, shadow or underworld deities, right? Call on them or whatever, or what do you call it? I just freaking missed it. Or just in general, like death and transition, I guess. Don't get afraid of those terms. Don't really worry that you need to go through that process. Everyone needs to go through this. The more you evade it, the harder it is, because it needs to compound and come back. Instead, check and see who you relate to for the process, right? Maybe call on them and ask for their guidance and help. Learning mythology and stories and history here is kind of a good idea, but at the same time, sometimes they don't really do justice to those beings, to those entities. So check with your own heart and, make sense there. Ask your guides to connect you to certain entities or beings or deities or gods, um, to help you through the transition that you need to go through. Um, if you want to get initiated, also ask for permission to get initiated into underworld work or whatever that is, because it's a good idea to one follow where you're being called to and what you want to do if it really interests you, but also you're gonna need to do a shit ton of work when it comes to clearing karma, understanding karma, and realizing darkness from multitude of levels, multitude of aspects. Um, really just quite many perspectives and sides. So you can provide actual help. So you can be a guardian. So you can be a healer in that sense. So you aren't just like promoting, self-elusive like karma cycling or circling, I mean, where you're not really dealing with the problem, you're just going in circles, talking about it differently, and then also kind of feeding people's egos. It's really important to kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to working with those energies to help people. And yeah, if someone works with a lot of underworld deities, they're probably a underworld healer themselves, either in training or very much they're a thing for a really long time. And they know their shit, how to get you out of karma, trauma bonds, out of unhealthy contracts, how to properly shift that, how to properly heal those wounds, how to reintegrate your shadow in a balanced way. And also, the best thing they do is call you out on your shit as well as on your triggered aspects of your own like uninhibited self, right? The one that is kind of like ignorant to its own shadow, or could be like kind of acting like a rabid dog. So, because sometimes we all can be hurt in such a way where, you act out of it and then you ignore the truth behind you acting out of that wound. So, yeah, seeking them out might be a good idea if you're having troubles with acting out and yeah, all of that stuff. Need to reintegrate the shadow, recognize it for what it is. I'm gonna try and instantly post like a video. I keep smacking the microphone. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna try and post another video alongside with this either right away or the next following day, so it's a bit spaced out, about Shadow Realms, Shadow Work, and have it a little bit more separate than this one, because it either was gonna be very short and cut off, or rambly like it is this time, which honestly I don't fucking care or mind. It could have been a short of like, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed sitting here in the Ramble Fest with me as always. I hope this helps you. I hope this has provided some downloads or healthy light code programming for you about understanding the spiritual realm of the underworld and that it's, so varied. You gotta check it out for yourself. Read about it before you go into it astrally. Get a guide as well, and yeah, find out. Maybe there's some other stuff that you can share with us about the underworld or your collective's underworld, for example, because every collective has a completely different underworld. Every collective, and there's a shit ton of them, so many of them, right? So yeah. We're gonna jump into shadow realming, shadow work, conversations. I don't know how that's gonna go, but we'll see, and I hope to see you over there as well. Have a good one. Peace be with you, blessings be with you, and may you find some comfort in your day today.